The Hidden Man. I was on a road trip from Portland to Chicago. It's nearly a 3-day drive, so I booked some places to sleep along the route. I chose Airbnb so I could enjoy the trip more than staying in crowded hotels. My first Airbnb was in Wyoming. The route through the state doesn't pass through any big cities, so it was in a really small town, probably no bigger than 2 or 3 miles long. As I passed the border into Wyoming, it started snowing heavily, dragging on the long day of driving. By the time I got into town, the roads were covered in snow, and the sun had already set. The town was pretty dead. I don't know much about small towns, but this seemed exactly like I thought it would, especially in a low-population state like Wyoming. I was hoping for a McDonald's or something for a quick dinner, but it was clear there wasn't going to be one. I drove through the town and turned down the road to my Airbnb. It was a long driveway leading up to a small home in the middle of a field, with tall, snow-covered pine trees lined up in the front yard. I parked on the side, got out with my bag, and walked around to the front. I put in the code and got inside, closing the door behind me and turning on the lights. It was small, probably 500 square feet, with just a living room and bedroom. I took my shoes off, dropped my bag next to the bed, and sat on the couch. When I did, a thump came from the bedroom. I looked back at the doorway I had just come from. It was pretty loud, but I had no idea what it could have been. I got up, walked back, looked into the room, and turned on the light. It was all the same. I checked the small bathroom that was in there as well, but it all looked good. The only other door in the house was the bedroom closet. I walked over and tugged on the door handle, but it didn't budge. It seemed like it was locked from the other side. At first, I was weirded out that a bedroom closet would be kept shut, but then I thought it could have been a maintenance closet the owner was storing stuff in. There were no other places to put anything, so that was the final conclusion I came to. I went back to the living room and rested my eyes on the couch while thinking through my plan for the next day. After 15 minutes, I got up and went over to the window, looking out to see if the snow was still coming down and if the roads would be drivable tomorrow. It was eerily dark outside, with no lights from the town showing behind the tall pine trees, and it was still snowing heavily. I shut the blinds and turned back to the couch, but I saw a shadow move in the bedroom. It was slow and smooth, like the shadow of a door opening or closing. I started walking over, listening as I approached the doorway and looked inside the room. Everything was in place, and nothing looked to have caused the shadow, but I knew I saw something moving there. I continued looking around until my eyes fell back on the closet. It was still closed, but something gave me an unsettling feeling about it. I stepped up, grabbed the handle, and it opened with ease. It wasn't locked anymore, but inside, there wasn't anything. It was just a small and empty walk-in closet. Before I could fully process everything and try to put the pieces together, I heard someone behind me. When I turned around, a large man was standing in the doorway to the bathroom. He looked beaten and tired, with scratches and cuts all over his face. As I stared at him, he didn't even seem to care. He stepped into the bedroom and kneeled down, grabbing a dirty and worn duffel bag from under the bed. The man then stood back up and didn't even look at me as he slowly walked out of the room and out the front door. I ran up and saw him trailing through the snow until he was beyond the lights from the house. I tried to get the police involved, but after giving my description, they really only talked to the Airbnb host. After leaving town, I didn't get any more information. I think it's most likely that he was just using the place to sleep or something, but the way he looked makes me second-guess that. I can't even think of what could have happened if I had gone right to bed that night with the man hiding in the closet just inches away from me. The Intruder. Last July, my house had major problems, and I was left without power for several days while it was being repaired. Since I work from home, this was a big issue. I had to rent an Airbnb to stay at for a few days until the power was back on in my home. I don't live in a big city, so there weren't many Airbnb options near me. The closest one at a reasonable price was about a 45-minute drive from my home. It was in a smaller, more secluded area, which wasn't known to be the best place to live. But I was only staying for a few days, and the savings made it worth it. When I arrived, I went straight inside and basically straight to bed, exhausted from everything going on with my house. The next morning, I got up early and started setting up my laptop and workspace. Just before I had to start work, there was a knock at the door. I debated whether to open it because it wasn't even my house. But thinking it might be the host or something, I went to check who it was. On the porch was a man, maybe in his early 30s, covered in tattoos. He didn't look like an Airbnb host or a salesperson. Unsure why he was there and not really wanting to know, I walked away from the door and back to the desk to start work. I had meetings and a lot of work to catch up on from my absence the last few days. I didn't leave the desk until 8 p.m. Even then, I considered going back to work after picking up dinner. Only a couple of minutes after I got back and started eating, there was another knock at the door. I immediately got up to check who it was and wasn't surprised to see the same guy from before. What could he possibly want from me this late in the day? I was more bothered than concerned, so I just walked away from the door and went back to eat my dinner. After about 30 minutes, I decided to work for at least another hour. I was tired, but the work had to get done, and I knew putting it off until tomorrow would make me more stressed. I put my headphones in and tried to focus. I got a lot done, and once I was satisfied, I finally closed my laptop for the night. I hadn't realized how dark it had gotten. My laptop screen was the only light on. I went to the front and flicked on the light, and a chill instantly rushed through me. Going down the front hallway were faint but unmistakable shoe prints. Looking around, they were all over the place, even going right up behind the desk I was working at. Terrified, I slowly followed them to the back door, which was cracked open. I can't even describe what I was feeling, it was pure horror. Moments later, footsteps started coming down the stairs. They were slow and careful, but when they got to the bottom, a man peered out into the hallway and looked directly at me. It was that same man, easily recognizable with all the tattoos. He looked surprised to see me walking around, but that surprise quickly turned to rage. His face showed nothing but irritation and anger. I was going to try to say something, but no words came out. As my heart pounded in my chest, I turned and sprinted out the back door. I ran through the backyard and into some trees far behind the houses. I sat behind a tree and pulled out my phone, starting to dial 911 but quickly closing it when I heard footsteps running toward me. I didn't expect him to follow me, but luckily, he passed by without seeing me and continued running into the dark. Once I got in contact with the police, I went back to the Airbnb and waited for them. I gave a detailed description of the man, and they found him the next day. It was confirmed to be him by the tattoos. He had broken into several homes in the days leading up to this, doing horrible things to the residents. I don't know what he was planning to do to me or why he seemed to leave me alone at first, but I can rest easy knowing he won't be able to hurt anyone anymore. The unexpected guest. I had booked an Airbnb several weeks in advance in a town I had never been to. A client I was meeting for work lived in the area, so I was only staying there for a day and then driving back home afterwards. The drive was 3 hours. When I pulled into the driveway and got out, the neighborhood was very quiet. Most of the houses' lights were off, and trees covered the lawns, blocking out most of the view. The only thing I really saw was a person walking down the road. They were far away, and nothing really looked off about it, but for some reason, it gave me a strange feeling. I went up and unlocked the door, going inside and getting situated. It was a very average house, nothing special about it, but great for what I needed. After making my rounds and checking the place out, I opened the front door to get my other bag from the car. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed someone standing in the road. It was the person I had seen walking a few minutes ago, but they weren't walking anymore. They were just standing in the road and facing the Airbnb. As I started walking toward my car, they noticed me and started walking away. I kept my eye on them, getting suspicious. They just kept walking down the street. I went back inside, made sure it was all locked up, and then opened the garage to pull my car in, just to be safe. Over the next couple of hours, I checked outside a few times to see if that guy was still walking around. I didn't see him anymore. Since I had to get up early the next morning, I went to bed. I slept decently, waking up a few times during the night, but my alarm went off at 4 a.m. for me to finally get up. The sun was still down, so it was dark outside. Groggily, I sat up in bed and immediately saw a light coming from under the bedroom door. I didn't remember leaving any lights on. I thought I must have overlooked a kitchen light or something. I got out of bed and walked up to the door. Just before I opened it, I heard something on the other side. It sounded like something moving around at the end of the hallway. I opened the door and saw the living room light was on, which I knew I had definitely turned off. The sound continued as I walked down the hallway and looked into the living room. A guy was in the corner, searching through one of my bags. He wore a black hoodie and ripped-up jeans, exactly like the person I saw walking around earlier. I only looked at him for a second before he turned around and faced me. He didn't look startled at all, it was almost like he was expecting me. He dropped the bag on the ground and yelled at me to stay where I was. He began making his way over, and I only had a split second to decide what to do. I turned and ran back to the room, slamming the door shut just before he caught up to me. He rammed into it and tried to kick the door down, then started messing with the lock on the other side. Thinking quickly, I opened a window, jumped out, and ran away. By the time I was able to get the police there, the man wasn't in the house anymore. My bags were gone too, of course, and to make things more terrifying, the bedroom door was opened. He had picked the lock and gotten in, so if I had just stayed and hidden in the bathroom or something, who knows what would have happened. The police seemed to think there was more intent behind this man's actions aside from just robbing me, so I pray he doesn't find me again. The night at the gas station. I'm a truck driver who delivers groceries around our city. Every day, I drive between the warehouse and different stores. It's a normal job, and I usually get to go home at a good time every night. One evening, after delivering groceries to the last store, I started heading back to the warehouse. It was getting late, around 9 o'clock. The warehouse is on the edge of the city, so it's a bit of a drive away from everything else. About an hour into my drive back, I stopped at a gas station to fill up my truck. It was running low on fuel, and I needed to fill it up before continuing. While I was at the gas pump, I noticed a group of guys hanging out near a pickup truck. They were staring at me and my truck, which felt strange. I thought maybe they were just curious or waiting for their turn to use the pump. After I finished filling up, I got back into my truck and started driving again. That's when things started to feel weird. The group of guys got into their pickup truck and started following me closely. They were swerving around and driving recklessly behind me. It made me nervous because their driving was dangerous. I decided to call the police to report them. It was important to let someone know about their dangerous behavior, especially because there could be other people on the road too. As we kept driving, they got even closer to my truck. They were speeding up and slowing down, trying to intimidate me. Then, suddenly, they pulled right in front of my truck and slammed on their brakes. I had to brake hard to avoid hitting them. Before I could do anything, they jumped out of their truck and tried to open my truck's doors. I knew I had to act quickly to protect myself. I put my truck in reverse to create some space between us. Then, I made a quick decision to drive through their pickup truck. It was a scary moment, but I knew it was the only way to get away from them. Luckily, they ran off the road just before I hit their truck. I didn't stop to see what happened next. I kept driving until I reached the warehouse. When I arrived, the police were already there. They found the guys and their damaged pickup truck on the side of the road. The police said the guys were drunk and not cooperating. They didn't explain why they were chasing me or trying to get into my truck. It was a scary experience. Those guys could have hurt me or caused a big accident. I'm grateful I acted quickly and got away safely. It was a reminder to always be aware of my surroundings and to call for help when I need it. Now, I'm more cautious when I stop at gas stations late at night. It's important to stay safe and watch out for unexpected situations. The stranger at my door. A few years ago, I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of a quiet building. The complex was nice, and I enjoyed my time there, but I only stayed for a year before moving to a new place. This scary story happened towards the end of my lease, on a night I won't soon forget. It was around 11 p.m., and I was getting ready for bed. As usual, I went to my large sliding glass door that led to a small balcony to close the blinds. My apartment overlooked the parking lot, and from where I stood, I could see my car. That night, something caught my eye, a man standing next to my vehicle. At first, I thought he was just passing by, but then I saw him trying to open my car door. My heart skipped a beat as I watched him peer inside the windows. I stepped out onto the balcony, calling out to the man, "Hey, that's my car." He looked up at me, his face expressionless, just staring in my direction. I yelled again, hoping he'd stop and run away, but instead, he began walking, not away from the parking lot, but towards my building. My mind raced. Horror movies played in my head as I watched him disappear from view. The front doors of the building weren't visible from where I stood, so I wasn't sure if he had entered or not. Something about the situation felt off. What was he doing at my car, and why was he coming towards my apartment? I closed the blinds, still uneasy, but convinced he had left. As I settled in for the night, I heard a sound that sent chills down my spine, the unmistakable sound of someone trying to open my front door. My heart pounded as I cautiously approached the door, listening to the silence that followed. After a few moments, I looked through the peephole. It was him. The man from the parking lot. He stood there, motionless, staring at my door. I didn't dare open it. Instead, I stayed frozen, watching him through the peephole. After what felt like an eternity, he knocked. The sound echoed through the apartment, but I remained silent, refusing to respond. Finally, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the hallway. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind raced with questions. Who was this man? Why was he trying to get into my car and now my apartment? Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I only saw him one other time. He tried to catch the elevator as I was heading up to my floor, but I was able to close the doors before he could reach me. After that, I never saw him again. This experience left me with a lingering sense of horror. It's the kind of scary story that makes you look over your shoulder at night, wondering who might be lurking in the shadows. To this day, I still wonder who that man was and what his true intentions were. Sometimes, the scariest part of a horror story isn't the ghost or the monster, it's the unknown, the human figure outside your door, silently watching, waiting. The mystery on the midnight road. One night, I was driving home super late after hanging out with a friend who lives far away. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired. The road was long and straight, with no other cars in sight for what felt like forever. It was just me and the endless road. Then, out of nowhere, my headlights shone on something up ahead. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. As I got closer, I saw a huge semi-truck parked right in the middle of the road, blocking both lanes. I was so confused. Why would a truck be parked here in the middle of nowhere? I sat there in my car, trying to figure out what to do. Maybe there was an emergency, I thought. I looked around, but there was nothing but darkness and silence. I could see a steep hill on one side and thick trees on the other. It looked risky to try to drive around the truck. After a minute of just staring, I decided I had to check if the driver needed help. So, I got out of my car and walked up to the front of the truck. Everything was so quiet, like the whole world was asleep. When I reached the driver's cabin, I noticed that the light was on inside. I knocked on the door lightly and called out, asking if everything was okay. No one answered. I knocked again, but there was still no response. I started to feel really nervous. I couldn't see inside the cabin because the window was too high up. That's when I noticed the door on the other side of the truck was wide open. I knew I had to see if anyone was there. As I walked around the truck, I saw a man coming up from the forest nearby. He looked really messy, like he'd been rolling in dirt. He didn't say anything, just kept walking towards the truck. I asked him if he was okay, but he ignored me. That's when I noticed dark stains on his clothes. I offered to call 911 for him, thinking maybe he was hurt or lost. Suddenly, he stopped and stared at me with this intense look. "I'm fine," he said in a deep voice that sent chills down my spine. I didn't know what to do. Then, he climbed into the truck and started driving away. I ran back to my car and drove straight to my friend's house. I called 911 and told them everything I saw. The police came, but they never found out what really happened. The truck was gone, and the whole thing was just a big mystery. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I think something bad must have happened there. Maybe someone made the truck stop, and who knows what happened to the original driver. It scared me to think about it, but I knew I had to tell someone. Even now, I still wonder what really went down on that dark road that night. It's a mystery that gives me goosebumps every time I think about it.